Hello, today I'll be making a video for us on basically how not to analyze a spot. And, this is kind of a harsh video and probably, some Nico might be offended, but it's just the truth. Like, you don't want to waste your time studying in this manner. And I think it's important that we understand why. Also, WizKid wanted me to make a video on this topic as well as how we can study with solvers. So I'm going to try and cover that today. So first, let's start by why this type of study is ineffective. Okay, so firstly, Nico posted a video. It's 9 minutes long. So first warning sign is that it's only 9 minutes long, because really, when you analyze any spot in a solver, in general, the minimum amount of time you want to analyze it is at least 20 minutes. The minimum. That's not including any of the time you spent, like creating the solution or running it in a solver. Over here, we're using InstantGTO, so obviously it's going to be pretty much immediate. You go through an entire hand in 9 minutes. That's a huge warning sign already, because it's just not that simple, GTO. There's a lot of things going behind it on every step, from street to street, right from preflop, basically. So let's get into the video over here.
Hey guys, really quick video about we saw yesterday in our and review session. So we are 25 deep, we are small blinds, button fold. We open 60 chips, which is 3 big blind and big blind called. Comes ace jack 10 bicolor, and we got 9-6 of hearts, red one. This is how the solver is playing this hand on the flop, so it's not really practical. All the bet sizing is used. I don't know how we're going to simplify it in.
Okay, so let's pause here. So right off the bat, we look at the GTO solution here, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with looking at the GTO solution. However, notice how, as Nico mentions, it's quite impractical, very hard to replicate. It has, it's got 28% check, like 22% block bet, like half pot, like 9%, 15%, 90, full pot 25%. Like, it's just extremely hard to memorize this strategy. And Nico does mention that. That's good. But then that's not like how did you learn anything? You didn't learn anything. You just say it's impractical, and then instead of trying to figure out how to make it practical, you just give up. You just like, all right, it's not practical, but who cares? Let's move on. That's not the way you want to use a solver. If you find a spot that is impractical, then no human can use it, and that's exactly where you will be able to find an edge. It means that's exactly where we can make it practical for ourselves, where others might not know what we are doing. So why not take this now and go into an actual solver and make a practical solution? Make a solution where you are using one or two sizings. Choose between a block bet and a pot bet, or a block bet and a large bet like 3/4, or just use one sizing and look at the EV differences. I mean, that's the whole point of studying GTO. It's like nobody will ever be able to do this. And a lot of times when people try to learn GTO, they think that, to become a top reg, they need to learn every spot in GTO. They need to learn how to play in GTO every single hand. Like, okay, on this flop, I need to have all these different sizings. I need to use a randomizer. On another flop, I need to use all these other different sizings. I mean, firstly, this one flop, like even if you spent like a long time studying it, I don't know, multiple days, you would never remember it, especially once you get to turns and rivers. Like you just wouldn't remember it. It's impossible. Even this one spot. How will anybody ever remember every single spot? That's just not possible. So in order to learn GTO, you need to learn all the concepts, and then you're going to see lots of patterns that you can repeat, and you need to simplify things, and you need to create your own strategies. And none of that's going on here. Instead, we just say, oh, it's impractical. It is impractical, therefore let's just move on and not care about how impractical it is.
And now are we
That's
going
really
to simplify it
not the way you want to go about
in
studying GTO.
real life?
Not helping anybody,
But
wasting
just
time. All right, now we're looking at
Alright,
hot combos.
okay.
That's not bad.
Just looking
Okay,
at
so we
the
see here that
backdoor
9-6.
flush draw, and
So we see that the hot combos are very good combos to use as bets. That's a pretty big revelation. Or I don't know, not really a revelation, but it's pretty important basically. And it's probably one of the most important things to note, actually. So one thing you want to note is probably that a lot of backdoor flush draw combos want to be put into your betting range. This, I mean, that's mentioned, but you're looking only at one hand. You're looking only at 9-6. And when you study GTO, that's not how you study GTO. Like, GTO doesn't study one hand in a vacuum, it studies the entire range. And that's another problem with the entire video and the entire way you studied this hand is that you're looking what to do with one specific hand on every specific street. Like, it just doesn't matter. It's like, how does the entire range play? So 9-6 here, yeah, it's supposed to be bet. That's good to know. And now that we know that, we should, like, why not try to create a range that you're going to be betting on the flop and not just looking at this one hand in a vacuum?
and so we can see we are almost betting all the end without a pair.
Like, we should be looking at the rest of the
we
range,
should
other
absolutely
than
bet
9-6,
our end.
other
Let's move
than
on
just
on
these
the turn.
no flush
Well,
draws.
let's look quickly at how should be blind played against a check.
Okay, now, so yeah, you spent way too little time on the flop. All right, and now we're looking at big blind's reaction. That's good, but over here, when you look through this again, you're not really spending much time on it. Again, you're like,
So
it's
yeah.
impractical. Listen.
Complicated as well.
Complicated as well. All right, let's move on. Forget about it. No, that's just not how you study GTO. It's not useful. Like, you need to spend time looking at this. Like, what is he doing that population might not be doing? He is checking back ace 10, or I mean, he's betting ace 10 every time, but he's checking back like over half of his top pairs. He's checking back a ton of flush draws. Many people are going to be betting way too many of them. Many of people won't be bluffing enough with total air. I mean, you're not looking at this stuff. Also, you didn't look at how villain is reacting to a bet. You only looked at how he's reacting to a check. So we don't know how we should create our betting strategy on the flop, because it would help to be able to create a betting strategy on the flop if we knew how big blind in position would react to the bet, right? Obviously. So, depending on all these factors, this is how you want to create your flop strategy. And once you create your flop strategy, you can now move on to the turn, because Pre-flop decides the flop decides the turn. I mean, it's a sequence of actions. And the fact is, over here, you determined that firstly, we should have bet on the flop, which is true. Although, if we look at the EV even, where is it? 9-6. If we look at the EV, even the EV between checking and betting pot is 15.8 to 14.28. It's a pretty small difference. It's like, the difference between, and it's using other sizes too, right? Like it's betting 90, it's betting 60. The EV of checking is 14.3 to 14.3 of betting 90, or 14.3 as well? No, 4. Okay, so 14.9. So 14.4 is checking, and 14.9 is betting half pot or 3/4, and 15.0 is betting pot. Like, the differences overall between betting and checking are very, very minor. And so if even a tiny difference in how villain reacts, if villain reacts in a very tiny manner, all of these things will change pretty hugely, basically. So that's why it's important that we make some assumptions on how villain plays to determine the best play on the flop. And that's why, again, going into Peer would be best. Like, looking in this in Insta GTO is, again, if you want to learn GTO, that's good, but that's something that's really simple. It's really fast. It's something you can do on your own. It's not the point of this group, or having a study group, or having, or like, trying to get some high quality coaching. Like, if I was trying to get some high quality coaching, I would definitely want to talk to someone who knows who he's talking about, someone who I consider is better than me. In my case, I think Nice to Meet is a good example of that. He knows more about me than GTO. Even though you guys think I'm like I'm a GTO player, he considers me, max exploit. So kind of shows the difference here. But yeah, it just showing clear lack of understanding of how to study GTO here, and how to use solvers. Because like there's so many guys, and it's really frustrating, because I see a lot of guys who they put time into these solvers, and they just waste their time, literally. Because I talked to Trobson, and he was like, I don't study in solvers anymore because when I was using skiers, it made my chip EV go down. Well, yeah, if you study like this, it's going to make your chip EV go down, obviously. If you study like, if like Perez, then it's going to make your chip EV go down, because like you're just looking at a strategy, and then you're like trying to copy it, basically, or you're looking at one hand. Like, no, you need to understand the big picture. You need to understand the patterns, see the patterns, understand the concepts, and trying to do this isn't doing any of it. One of the worst things here is that, all right, we concluded that we need to bet on, or that it's a good hand to bet, all right? We don't even need to bet necessarily. We should probably look at big blind strategy, but it's a good hand to bet. That's clear. So we concluded that, and Hero, WizKid in this situation, decided to check on the flop. And because of that, we can assume that Hero's entire strategy on the flop is already quite different from the solver from Insta GTO. And because of that, once that happens, everything from here just doesn't matter anymore. Like, the video is here. The video is totally over right now. Like, once you reach this point, it's over. Like, there's no point going to the turn. It's just totally useless. I mean, GTO is checking 0% of the time, or like 1%, or like something with this hand, Insta GTO. So it has this at 0 frequency. So what does it matter anymore what it's going to do on the turn? What does it matter anymore what it's going to do on the river once you analyze this and everything is so different? You can go through the turn a bit. I mean, there's nothing really too interesting. You kind of you kind of just look at, you kind of spend like 1 minute on the turn. I mean, yeah, the turn is the least interesting part, but basically, yeah, we should be delaying most of our bluffs, but again, the sizing is very mixed. It's hard to determine. You want to create a strategy again. Choose one sizing. Choose two. Never choose more than 3 sizings in general. Like, it doesn't make sense to ever choose more than 3 sizings. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 sizings here, and there's even a small percentage of all in, if I see this correct. Like, that just doesn't make sense, and very impractical again. So again, this river solution is going to be based on this turn sizing, which is happening. The turn sizing is happening, I don't know, like less than 20% of the time, and it's happening 20% of like 1% of the time from the flop. So it's happening whatever 20% of 1% is, that's the amount that it's happening on the turn, and you're bringing this 20% of 1% to the river, basically. That doesn't seem very practical. It seems totally useless, and studying this seems very useless and a waste of time. So let's move on, because you don't look at any of the other range again. You basically just look at the no-mate hands in general. Again, not looking at the range. That's another gigantic mistake. Looking a bit at his calling range, that's good, but not putting nearly enough time in it, like not determining what he's supposed to do with his entire range. And finally, we're on the river, and we spend some more time here. And all right. Oh, look. 9-6 of hearts is a check. Oh my God, we found the solution. I know the answer. No, I'm being totally sarcastic. Like that just, no. That's not how it works. Like, we can look at one combo. We can look at one example, or we can look at all the hearts here. I mean, you're looking at this based on the fact that GTO is always betting it on the flop and not using that size very much on the turn. Like, that is it's going to happen extremely rarely, and this turn of events is going to happen very rarely, and you're not going to be able to remember it ever. Yes, the fact that it's going to give up a lot with missed hearts, that is relevant, but is it relevant in this situation, given that you haven't looked at Villain's calling range yet? You haven't. All right, so you spend like a lot of time talking here about some of the bluffing range, because you want to know what the bluffing range should be, but you don't spend any time looking at the villain's range until like most of the video is looking at your own bluffing range, when you didn't spend any time looking at the flop, looking at the turn, or looking at villain's big blind calling range. You spend like 1 minute at the end looking at villain's calling range. I mean, notice that he is folding a few aces. Most people probably aren't doing that. However, he is also just calling some like naked king high sometimes, or all flushes. He is folding a good amount of jacks. He's folding a good amount of tens. Like, is villain gonna do that? Also, there's some threes. I guess those are gonna be flushes on the river. So, like, again, what if he is going to fold more tens? Like, as we see, he has to call some tens. What if he's folding every single 10? Will that make a difference? I mean, probably. You didn't really spend much time looking at the EV difference either. Let's see, maybe you click on it at some point. I want to see if you can find the EV difference. Like, that's kind of important as well.
As we can see, we prefer to because it's not
Okay, I can't find the EV difference, unfortunately. Maybe you didn't click on it. I mean, I'm trying to... Okay, here we are. So the EV difference between all in is -6 to check is -0.3. So you see, this is actually kind of a significant EV difference. It's somewhat significant. However, it's taking into factor all of the gigantic deviations which happened on the flop and the turn. These are huge deviations which were took, and because of that, the EV difference will be much bigger, obviously. If you made some different assumptions on the flop and turn, everything would be different. So yeah, that's basically what I mean by it's a waste. Like, I mean, knowing that you shouldn't barrel on the river with a missed flush draw, that's, it's kind of obvious. It's not anything new. And it's also like, you really wanted to study this one spot, like this one hand, really. You didn't want to look at the entire range. You didn't want to look at how flop ranges affect the turn. And that's really what you need to do with GTO to understand it on a higher level. And so I just find this a total waste of time and a totally ineffective way to study. And I need to point that out because, I mean, you can do this. You can like study how GTO plays in a certain, like in different boards by yourself really fast. It's not hard to do. This isn't hard to do. What's hard to do is to be in a study group and study deeply about a lot of these stuff in PO. Those videos I made, that was hard to do. That takes hours, and I do that by myself. I do like at least one spot a week. I'll try to do more as well. Like maybe I can do like 3 or 4 spots in a week if I spend a lot of time with it. Like not even spots, like probably more spots, but like less flops basically. So let's go through this, what I wrote about GTO basically, because I wrote something for you guys. So regarding the most effective way of using solver asked by Qiskit, usually you want to know GTO solution first as a base, as mentioned. Yeah, that's what insert GTO can be good for. That's what, for example, I mean, you could still use PO solver and simple postflop. To be honest, if you just go through spots individually, you're going to end up having a solver in your head, and that's way more important than just copying GTO. But yeah, just knowing GTO solution is only the first step, and to be honest, it's the easy step. It's also the step a lot of people waste too much time on, since generating a library of the GTO solution will, to be honest, be useless and ineffective. Okay, I don't know, maybe you think I haven't worked with insert GTO before or skiers before. Actually, that's kind of far from the truth. I was probably the biggest, like, culprit or the biggest time waster. I don't know. Like, I'm telling you this because I spent way too long on insert GTO. I wasted too much of my own time. I don't want others to repeat the same mistake, basically. Like, I'm telling you, in 2018, I reached hundreds at the end of 2017, and in 2018, my goal was to learn a lot about GTO. That's when I started to put a lot of time into it. Like I'd studied a bit before, but 2018 is when I really got to work. And one of the things I did was I would literally mark a ton of hands, and I would literally go through hands every single day in skiers. And it would usually 1 hour minimum a day. But very often I could just spend an entire day looking through skiers. And my volume was low because of it, because I'd spend so much damn time in skiers. And then I wasn't actually, a lot of times I wasn't, sometimes I'd end up seeing some patterns. And obviously sometimes I'd end up going deep because I wasn't totally wasting time. I wasn't a total idiot. But in a lot of spots, it was just like, yeah, okay, over here, this is what GTO is doing. I don't know why, but I'm gonna try to copy this because why not? GTO is doing it, but and that's just not effective. It's just not the good way to study. And once I started working with PO and simple post flop, and that's really where the breakthrough came in for me. And also, later on, at the end of 2018 up to like the middle of this year, I was working with Nice to Meet, and he kind of confirmed everything that I'm saying here. Um, and he kind of, he showed me the best ways to use solvers, and now, thankfully, I'm able to do it by myself, which is where we all want to end up. So anyways, humans can simply not remember everything, as we saw. We need to simplify, we need to recognize the patterns, we need to understand the concepts. You want to get to a point where you can basically like guess the GTO solution for most situations without needing to look it up in a solver. You need to have a solver in your head. This is really important. This is like a phrase you need to remember, like have a solver in your head. The fact is, when you look at this, you're not going to ever be able to remember this in your head. What you can remember is like you go like what are the type of hands you want to do things with. All right, now like the hearts want to probably be betting the flop here. But if you check here, then what is his turn range going to be? It's going to be less. Like my solver in my head over here is telling me that as played, given the population
He's going to
reads, jamming on the river here with a delay and barrel is going to be plus EV. That's what my solver in my head is telling me. And yes, I know it's against GTO, but GTO didn't take into factors everything else. And if you went into PO or simple post flop and you put in the same parameters that my solver in my head is putting in, it would come to the same solution. Also, I mean, some in the talks you mentioned something about top regs will own you or something. I mean, that's just not really the case. I've played against all of them, so not really. Anyways, that's another topic. To do this, you need to understand the concepts behind GTO. Then you want to ask some questions, and many different ways a solver can help to answer. So finding the GTO-based solution is a waste of time for this group. Everyone can do that by themselves if they want. Like, if you want to just look at the GTO-based solution, you can do it by yourself on your own time. What I want to achieve with this group is something much bigger. I want to use this group to like accelerate our learning process to make us better than everyone else, basically, as fast as possible. Like, usually you need some people to work with. Like, if you're in a stable, then you're gonna have a good coach, hopefully. To be honest, most big stables fucking suck, like SmartSpin or Spin Legends. They're really bad, but when I was working with Nice to Meet and Spinex, I was coaching for Spinex. I had a very good deal because of it, and Nice to Meet was giving me some coachings, and it was really valuable, definitely. So, in some cases, stables can definitely be good. But again, kind of going off topic. But yeah, working in a group does help, but point is, I don't want to waste each other's time, and that video was an example of wasting time. I hope you understand why. It doesn't matter what the GTO strategy is on any board or on any street if you cannot use it in game practically, or if you don't understand it. Okay, so what we need to do is deep work. I mean, there's this book written by Cal Newport. It's called Deep Work. Maybe go give it a read, but it basically means you just focus hard, and there's some hard stuff you need to study that's hard to remember, but it's going to be rewarding to learn. It means going much deeper, asking the correct questions. So yeah, before you go into a solver, you usually want to have a question. And the question isn't what does this one hand combination do? Or it's not what do this one range of combinations do on the river. That's not the correct question. And then you want to find the correct answers. So I'll give some examples of correct questions, though I've already done a few videos of that. The deep work is the hard work. That's the work that improves us the most. If I want to learn the GTO solution to something that's easy to do alone in a couple minutes, deep work is the work that stays in the memory and it helps in the long run with many other concepts. It helps to create that solver in your head when you're playing. In the end, you're not going to be able to, you're not going to have insert GTO by your side. You're not using a bot thing to help you, whatever you call it. Like, you're not, there's not this program that's telling you what button to click, right? You need to create that in your head. And that's not going to come by studying the GTO solution on a flop. It's going to come by asking these questions, and then the solver will give you the output, but it won't give you the answer. Your brain needs to figure out the answer. And once your brain figures out the answer, you can actually use that knowledge in game, basically. So no, this group is for something much more complicated. It's to get us to the next level of thinking. You know, kind of going off topic again, but a lot of people think like, I don't know, spins are fucking dying or something. I mean, like, people deviate so much. I think I'm actually pretty optimistic about the future of spins. Anyways, that takes too much time to do alone, but it's the biggest difference between top regs and normal regs. That's why having others to study with is so valuable. So I'm going to praise Nice to Meet now a bit. There's a reason why he has the most current students or former students on 250s plus. You know, there's Monkey Boss and Ukrainian Fla, who are right now probably the two best regs on 1Ks, right? Fund, very good. Mnemonic, Foxnuts, Winterhedge, me, Danny Poker, El Jabali on Winamax, Yonguri, Exploit City, Volvan Million, Focus Aya, Benny Silver, Fig Six. Like, all these guys have either worked with him in the past or they currently do. And he's never had big stables, you know. He's always had like smaller stables. And just look at the list of players. It's like over half the lobby on 250s and higher, right? It's most of it. And it's not a coincidence. It's because his teaching methods are good and he knows how to use solvers. He knows how to learn from solvers and he knows how to explain and he knows how to get knowledge from GTO. And he doesn't just have that knowledge of GTO, but he has the best knowledge from the GTO to turn it into an exploit, basically. And so, you know, a lot of times I'm like, game theory optimal should actually be game theory exploitative or something, because that's really the way it should be for humans. Yeah, so a lot of people who talk to me and they hear my thought process when I like just talk to them about poker, or if I, you know, make one of these reviews, or if I give somebody a coaching, people think I'm a GTO player. But I'm actually a max exploit player. At least that's what Nice to Meet considered me. Nice to Meet also thought VBV, who is one of his best friends, was a max exploit player. And again, a lot of regs who are on 500s who I talked to thought that VBV was this GTO player. I mean, you know, I'm a max exploit player. I'm trying to exploit people in general. I'm not trying to play GTO. But I'm using all of these exploits from the things I learned from GTO, and that's how I got good, and how I keep getting better. It's not all just from like intuition and feel. Like, if it was all on feel, I wouldn't be. Firstly, I don't know if I'm that talented. Like, I don't think I'm that talented. Secondly, even if I was, I'd be a lot less precise in my exploits, and I'd be a lot less confident in making some of them as well. So that's why, especially if you're not like, I don't know, some prodigy, maybe like, I think someone like Monkey Boss, or uh, maybe Blooming, since I know he never studies. I think those guys are super talented because those are the type of people who don't study, and but maybe they're just really confident too. They're kind of crazy. I'm not really crazy. So that's why studying GTO, it gives me this confidence to be able to go out and make some of these weird plays sometimes, which people who haven't studied the spot take advantage of. That's where my edge is. So I think my methods of studying and what the methods that Nice to Meet taught, they can work for everyone if you put in the work, whereas only a few people, like with talent, whatever you want to call it, can do it without much study. Anyways, that's again another topic. Even CWAT sounds like a fish. Yeah, I got coachings from CWAT too, lots of private ones. Like, people thought he was one of the end bosses of 500s. I mean, if you compare CWAT's thought process to Nice to Meet, it's like not even close. It's like night and day difference. CWAT just sounds like a fish. Like, he actually sounds like a fish compared to Nice to Meet. Like, CWAT's thought process is so simple compared to Nice to Meet. It's actually incredible, and it's kind of like this. It's kind of like very simple here. Like 9-6 suited. All right, this is what we do with 9-6 suited. But I mean, what about everything else? Like, how does this 9-6 suited on the river matter at all? Yeah, but Nice to Meet put in so much work into GTO. He studied so damn much that you could pretty much ask him anything about GTO and he would know the answer. And if he didn't, then he'd go and find out. Like, he's one of these guys who prefers to study than to grind. I'm kind of like 50-50, I think. I kind of like both evenly, and I definitely like grinding a lot more now than I used to. And then because he knows all about the GTO, he's also going to know the exploit. But yeah, Nice to Meet's job now, like, he's not really grinding anymore, right? He's got so many students. He's making more money off studying and teaching GTO. So he's kind of like, he spends all his damn day just studying and solves. That's his main thing right now. He's not playing so much. He even studies like cash games and stuff sometimes. But yeah. Anyways, personally, like, I don't want to split my profits again for that knowledge. You have to split a lot of money. Like, maybe it's like 40% if you're not a coach. Maybe it's like 20% if you are. Well, depends. And I don't want to spend tons of time in a stable coaching either. Yeah. Also, here's another thing. Like, his stables are always getting bigger. So there's less and less personal attention. And what I noticed is that there's a lot more groupthink. Because when a lot of people think about GTO, they think GTO is the one solution. But have you guys not seen through some of my videos that you can create multiple different pseudo GTO solutions that have very similar EVs, right? And the thing is, the one GTO solution is almost impossible to memorize, but you can create a ton of pseudo GTO solutions, even just in your brain, and that can be much simpler. And as long as people are not reacting properly, you could make much more money than the one GTO solution, because GTO isn't trying to win the most money. It's basically the solution that is beating another GTO solution. But GTO doesn't beat GTO, so it ends up being the solution that is trying to lose the least money, basically. So a lot of plays are break even. So you can have two plays which are basically the same in EV, but one of them will be much better than the other because against the population, one of them will work much better, basically. And so what happens with groupthink is that a lot of people will start to use it, and a lot of people will know each other's strategy, but we as a group in this little group, like we're a small group, it's not like we're a big stable with like over 50 people. It's a small group. And then we can create these pseudo GTO solutions which exploit the population. Now, the thing is, you need to find these spots where people don't study them. That's the hard part. You need to ask the right questions. This didn't do any of this. This didn't ask any of the right questions. It didn't go into, all right, how do I think people are going to call on the flop if we do bet? Do I think, for that reason, that betting big or small is better? Do I think maybe checking is better? It also missed the entire point of the river. Like, on the river, you're not thinking, am I gonna like get a lot of folds here, and therefore my bet is plus EV? You're just thinking, is this GTO? Basically, like, that's the worst thinking process ever. Like, I mean, is GTO doing this? As we see, a lot of missed hearts are not doing this, therefore we should not. But why can't we if the entire flop and turns have been totally misplayed? If I think he's going to be overfolding, and if I don't think he's got enough strong hands in his range to call me, then it's going to be a very profitable bet, right? So that's where you need to go with this. You need to learn the spots that people are not comfortable with. Yeah, this is why it's possible to naturally exploit someone if you know that what stable they're a part of. I mean, exploiting someone from smart spin is really easy. That's why somebody like Tropson or Jack over 9 are just bum hunters, right? Because then they don't know how to study GTO. Or even if they do it by themselves, which is way slower. Like, that's why being in a group is so beneficial. I've been nice to meet students in the past. I know how to study GTO effectively using such methods that are available to everyone. I want to keep doing it with others, mainly for myself because I'm selfish, because I want to keep improving. I want to grind. I want to grind the rate back next year, basically. And this year, I've got Red Diamond on Winamax, and I want to get the Diamond VIP status next year on Party Poker as well. And once my bankroll allows it, I want to get back to 250s. And obviously, in order to do that, I'll need to become as good as I can of a player. So yeah, those are my goals. Knowing how to study is the most important thing. And I can try to show you guys how to study. I've showed a few examples, but there's many more. I hope this video kind of clears things up as well. Learning on your own is possible, but there's a lot of examples of successful people on the highest levels to study on their own now, including people from this list. So, Vovan, Million, Focus, Aya, Fig6, they all left Nice to Meet, myself, and we're on our own now. Maybe some of these guys study with others, maybe they don't. But basically, just because he was the master and he taught me a ton, and I'm really thankful for that, it's not like I can't use, like, the important thing isn't actually the solutions he's giving. And it's not what InstaGTO says. It's not what anyone says. It's your personal thought process. Like, you want to get to hundreds or whatever, or you want to get to a good level. It's going to help, right? It's going to help to have a coach or to watch some videos of somebody who knows what they're talking about. That's going to help. But to get to the top level, and I think these are 3 guys who are at the top level, like Fig6, he made 40,000 in September. Focus Aya has been regarded as one of the best players on Party Poker now for the past year or more. And Vova and Million plays 1Ks on stars against all of Nice to Meet students. So, I would consider these three to be great examples of people who are working on their own and they got to the absolute top levels. So basically, to get beyond a certain level, to get beyond just hundreds or like Bum Hunter on 250s, whatever you want to call it, I think it's important to study, to have your own methods and to study on your own. And that's what I want to do with this group. No more a part of the group think. No more like, oh yeah, Nice to Meet said this, I have to do this, etc. Like, stuff like that. And we can share info with each other, just us guys. And it means that they need to figure it out, like without us telling them. Because the thing is, if I was in SpinX, he was also coaching a bunch of other guys on hundreds and 250s. And then, so everyone would be using that strategy and everyone would know the counter because of that. Right now, since we're not a part of that, we can create our own strategies, pseudo GTO strategies, which people are not familiar with, and that we can go ahead and exploit basically. And that's the key. Like pseudo GTO strategies that people are not comfortable with. It might lose a little bit to the pure GTO solution, which is fine because no one will ever know the pure GTO solution, but it's going to beat the hell out of any like human basically, because they don't know what the heck we're doing. That's why you can pick some weird sizings in some spots and it's like, what are you doing? Yeah, but the only thing is we'd be way faster if we shared this knowledge together. There's endless amount of different pseudo GTO strategies that we can create for all different kind of spots. And the more of these that we have in our repertoire and the better we can use them and the less people have studied them, then the bigger our edge. So since we're not in a stable, only we are going to know these pseudo GTO strategies we decide to share with each other. I think this is one of the reasons why these three guys are so good and so on top of themselves, because they left that attachment. It can be kind of like scary sometimes working on your own because you don't have that like support. You don't have that like coach or mentor anymore. But I'm at that point I don't think I need one anymore, basically. And it's better that I do these things on my own. But I want to work with you guys and also have everyone help each other, basically. So everyone here works together and improves each other. I mean, most of us are playing on separate sites, and we're a very small group anyway. So, like, if we just keep this to ourselves, it shouldn't really affect any of us individually. But yeah, I think it can give us a big advantage, and I hope this was a better explanation of why and how to study GTO. So here's a few examples, some general types of questions you could ask to a solver, and the solver gives you the output, and you basically, your job is to figure out why is the solver doing this, and then mark that down as a concept and note it down. So for example, in that 9-6 hot, while the flop and turn were totally the most important part, and we didn't go over it. Yeah, it's kind of important to note that we shouldn't barrel with missed flush draws. However, I have still seen some boards where GTO does keep barreling with missed flush draws. Maybe it would be interesting to find out in what boards it does keep barreling missed flush draws and why is that? I mean, there are examples of that. It's not like every time you have a missed flush draw you give up. I gave an exploitative reason why I wouldn't give up with a missed flush draw in that situation. Which I'm sure if I lock the nodes properly in PO or simple, it would do the same thing. But some examples to play could be, why does GTO play these two boards so different when they seem almost the same? So, for example, have you ever looked at button versus big blind, ace king 5 and ace queen 5? Have you seen the difference? It's a pretty big difference, and that would be something interesting to analyze and find out why. You see, I already know the answer, but at least that's interesting and it's going somewhere, so maybe someone wants to do that, you know? Another one, why does GTO play this one board so different from different positions? So maybe you could look at king 2-3. Why does GTO play it so different, small blind versus big blind, in a limped pot and in a raised pot? I mean, it's really different again. Why is it? Another interesting question. Again, I know the answer, but again, if you want to look into that, that's way more interesting. Like, we're looking at concepts here. We're not looking at like one hand. We're not looking at what to do just on this flop. We're looking at an entire range and how it can apply to everything else in our entire game, basically. Because things translate. Like, I can even take some GTO concepts from spins and apply it to like PLO. Anyways, after analyzing GTO, we see that people are not playing GTO or playing versus it in a wrong manner. Are they just exploiting themselves? In this case, it might not even be necessary to be trying to exploit them, and then it's our job to like analyze GTO and know what spots there are. That's why having some knowledge of GTO can be good, obviously. But again, stuff you can do alone mostly. But if they are playing it wrong, then it can be worth it to understand the GTO concepts behind it so that we understand it better, and then we play it right, and we play GTO whilst others don't, because that's what we determined, that the population is misplaying in this spot mostly. So having just the knowledge of GTO without even adjusting can be better in this spot. Pseudo GTO strategies. So these are strategies which are not GTO, but they are very close to GTO in EV or expectation. And it's basically simplified, but we simplify it in a way where population is going to play worse versus it, even worse than GTO. So I gave some examples of this in my first video, for example. So, I've given lots of different examples of these videos, and this is the type of stuff I want to do. So hopefully this kind of gets my point across. It was really long, and I kind of went off on a lot of tangents, I know, but it's really important, and I just don't want to I don't want people to waste my time. I don't want you guys to waste your own time. I don't want you guys to waste each other's time. And I thought it was kind of important that I pointed out like why this was a bad example. So, I know it sounds kind of harsh and mean, but in the end, I'd like to thank you for making this, because it's like a really good example of kind of what not to do. And I hope that explains why. So, all right. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you got any questions or what you think and stuff like that.